If you are a guy who is currently going through a separation or you are already separated from your wife, then you are going to definitely want to stay tuned for today's episode because I have a special guest with me from Hope for Separated Husbands, the author of SOS Reconnect, Mr. Randy Pryor. And that's coming up next right here on Own Your Calendar. Welcome to Own Your Calendar, the go-to resource for online business owners, coaches, and course creators who want it all: a profitable business and the time and energy for yourself and the people and things you love most. I'm your host, Stephen Box, and I'm here to help you build the systems and habits that allow you to escape the chaos and start living life on your terms. Welcome back to another episode of Own Your Calendar, brought to you by Unshakable Habits. I am your host, Stephen Box, and as I said today, we are talking specifically to those men out there who are currently going through a separation or are already separated from your wife. And I have a special guest with me for this special 3-part series, Mr. Randy Pryor, who is the owner of Hope for Separated Husbands, as well as the author of the book SOS Reconnect. You might be wondering why exactly we're having this topic on the podcast right now, and what can you expect out of this series? And I'm going to share both of those with you right now. First and foremost, what can you expect? Over the course of this 3-part series, Randy is going to share with us the 3 big mistakes that he sees a lot of guys making that makes it very difficult, if not impossible, for them to reconcile their marriage. And here on episode 1, we're actually going to learn a little bit about Randy's background, his story, and why he has expertise in this area. And we're going to jump right into mistake number 1. On the next episode, we will do mistake number 2, and then on the third and final episode, we will do mistake number 3. In terms of why I wanted to have Randy on the podcast to talk about this, the whole concept of why I wanted to do this podcast is I saw so many business owners who were putting everything they have into their business, and they were neglecting their health. They were neglecting their relationships, their marriages, time with their kids. They were neglecting their personal hobbies. They were neglecting their spiritual health. And I wanted to help them find that alignment that allows them to thrive as a whole person. But one of those areas that I mentioned is our relationships, and specifically a lot of times people's marriages. It's not uncommon when you have someone who has a high profile job or their own business that they get so consumed with work that it negatively impacts that relationship. And the reality is, most of the time it is men in this particular instance who find themselves with a marriage that is falling apart. And maybe they missed the warning signs, right? There's a lot of stuff out there that talks about how to be better in a relationship. But let's be honest, most guys aren't really reading that stuff. And I'm not saying that as a knock or an insult on anyone. It's just not what we're wired to do. We're not taught that, right? As men, we're taught how to be successful in the world. We're not taught how to be in relationships, and that's something we actually talked about during the interview. But what I have also found is there's a lot of stuff out there for guys who have been divorced and they're trying to get back in the saddle, but there's nothing for that in between. The guy whose relationship is on the rocks, he's maybe already separated, about to be separated, going through the separation, whatever. In that window, there's not a lot of people out there helping these guys figure out how to fix it. And I will tell you, as a guy, and I've had this conversation with a lot of other guys, we like to fix things, right? We're very solution minded. And so when we can't fix something, it drives us crazy, right? It's something that's really hard for us to accept a lot of times. And so I wanted to bring Randy on to give you some solutions today to help you fix this situation. So with that, Randy, welcome to Own Your Calendar.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
So let's start off here, man. Just if you could take a second to introduce yourself, share a little bit about your story and what makes you an expert on this subject.
Absolutely. As it turns out, I was an entertainer, a professional comedy magician and juggler for 40 years, most of my life. And it was great. I had a lot of fun. I worked on cruise ships. I worked all over the world, and that was great. And the last half of my cruising career, I got married and my wife went with me, and we had a great time out on the ships. But at one point we decided, you know what? We want to have kids, but we don't want to do it on the open ocean. We thought, we'll get off the ships and go on land. And I found 3 different places, some theaters, local theaters, that I could work. And it was great, except at one point, 2 of the 3 theaters that I was performing in closed. So I had to dive into work even more. And as it turned out, I became a bit of a workaholic. Didn't realize it at the time. And my wife kept telling me, hey, I need some help around the house. I need more. I need help with the kids. We had 2 little kids. But I thought the best way for me to help is to earn more money, provide for the family, because that's what the world teaches us. If you want to be a good husband, you need to become a good provider. So I just poured myself into it. And after about 14 years of marriage, my wife just said, yeah, this isn't working for me. I don't love you anymore. I want a divorce. And it was so painful. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't understand what was going on. I said what most guys say. I knew it was bad, but I didn't think it was that bad.
Yeah.
Very common. Okay. So fortunately, I went across the street to my church and they had a support group for men. And so I dove in and I learned everything about what I should have been doing for the last 14 years. And about 6 months into it, they asked me to become a leader and help other guys get through it. And that was over 14 years ago. So I've been doing this for 14 years. And now my life I've got joy, more peace than I've ever known, significance. It's a completely different life. And my heart goes out to anyone who has to go through this because it is so painful. The separation it's just unbelievably painful. I'd rather have another kidney stone than go through that again.
Yeah, it sounds like something that would definitely be a horrible situation. And I haven't personally dealt with this, but I have had friends who have dealt with it. And you can hear just having conversations with them, the desperation in their voice to go, I need a solution, because in their mind, they have done everything society tells men to do, right? And hard, they've been a provider, they've been a protector, they're doing all these things. And so even though they know that something's off, there's this, I feel like I've done the best I can do kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden, someone else is coming in and saying, hey, I don't want this anymore. And not only is that shocking, for a lot of guys, I think a really difficult part of this is the loss of control.
Absolutely. It's the fear of the unknown. It's loss of control. It's devastating because they didn't know. They were doing the best they could and they thought it was okay. I did. It's not that my wife didn't tell me over 14 years what was wrong. She did tell me. And I did, like most guys, I would get better, right? I would clean up. I would do whatever that she wanted, basically, for about 3 weeks. Yeah. And then it would slide right back into how it used to be, right? Yeah. That's what most guys do.
Yeah, and just to touch on what we're going to be covering for the rest of the week here, I mentioned earlier that there's going to be 3 very specific mistakes. And you've already touched a little bit on 2 of them. So number 1 is trying to change your mind, right? That's mistake number 1. Right. Number 2 is actually going to be not really seeing her perspective. Mm-hmm. And then the 3rd one, which you just hit on, is trying to make her happy. And I think this is where a lot of guys get themselves in trouble, right? And especially, I think that middle one that they're going to be talking about Wednesday is going to be really important for people to tune in and listen to, because if you're not understanding her perspective, then your chances of changing her mind or making her happy are both extremely slim.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Sure. So you want to jump into mistake number one?
We'll get into that here shortly, but I do want to ask you really quickly here before you jump into that. What is the difference between the way the world teaches this? Because I know you come at this from a faith-based perspective. So what is the difference between the way the world teaches us to resolve this versus the way that a faith-based approach to this is going to look?
Sure. The world teaches us happy wife, happy life. That's what the world teaches us, right? So it's our job to make her happy. It's our job to be crystal clear about our communication, okay? The world will teach us if it's to be, it's up to me. Yeah. So I've got to work really hard, right? So the world is teaching us certain things that work, and that's the hard part for us. What I teach is the faith-based part. What I teach is actually very counterintuitive, because that's not what works everywhere else. Everywhere else, if something's not working, you got to fix it, right? That's what the world teaches us. So that's one of the reasons why it doesn't work in a relationship. It's just not what we're supposed to be doing. And that's why it's so hard for us guys, because it works everywhere else. They don't hire you for any kind of job and hope that you do a good job. They don't. You don't get, if you do your job, you get paid. Yeah. If you don't do your job, they'll hire somebody else. Yeah. So it's very clear to us, and that's what's so difficult with a relationship. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're going to touch on this throughout the week, but I think this is something that a lot of guys have never been taught, right? Especially, I'm 45 myself, and I think a lot of guys my generation or older, we especially were never taught even how to function within a relationship. We were taught how to function at work, right? We're taught how to be successful in the world, but we were never taught how to actually be in a relationship.
Right. Yeah. And unfortunately, and this is a huge drawback, the world actually teaches us that if you reach out, if you need help in a relationship, you're weak. You don't reach out for help. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Yeah. And that's stupid, but that's the world. Okay. If we needed some kind of help in, I don't know, my golf game, right? Okay. Who'd you talk to? You talk to a golf pro. Yeah. You need help in business. What do? You reach out for help and you get help. But in a relationship, we're supposed to know already. And if we don't know, then we're weak. I got to tell you, gentlemen, it's not weak. It's wise to reach out for help.
Absolutely. But with that in mind, we need to actually offer some help to these guys today. You said that mistake number one is trying to change her mind, which I imagine there's a lot of guys whose jaw just hit the floor as soon as they heard that, because they're like, what do you mean? What else am I supposed to do? If I don't change your mind, what's going to change? So why is that a mistake?
It's a mistake because she's done. If there's a separation, and this is different than an argument or a fight or what. Okay, an actual separation is either when she's kicked you out or she's moved out or something. And trying to change her mind at this point just doesn't work. In fact, it pushes her away. Okay, and my book is called SOS Reconnect. The first S in SOS is stop pushing her away. And that's what we do when we try to change her mind. And a quick review that we mentioned last time, very common for men. We all think, I knew it was bad, but I didn't think it was that bad. So we don't have the same perspective, and we'll talk about that next time. But we don't look at it the same way they do. So here's what it comes down to. And we all know this, but I'll say it out loud anyway. The Lord made us different, men and ladies. We know this, okay? The ladies have the emotions and the nurturing and the intuition, all great stuff. But that's not what he gave us, right? He gave us the logic and the need to fix things. That's in our DNA. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just not the same as how they look at it, okay? When we look at it, everything in our world is basically a two-step process. Something's broken, let's fix it. That's what works for us in the world. We talked about our job, right? Employment. Okay, if something's broken in your job, you fix it, and then you get paid. Okay, so it works for us everywhere else. That's why this is so hard for us. because in our world, two-step process, something's broken, let's fix it, works for us, it's all good. But when it comes to a relationship, if you're married to a woman, then it's not the same for them. It's a three-step process for her. Okay, if something's broken, like a relationship, first we need to reconnect. And if we reconnect, then we can work on the issues and fix it. So we've got it backwards. We think that if we work on the issues, that'll fix it. But at this point, if there's a separation, she's thinking two things. This is why she's just not coming back to you, right? She's thinking, hey, you know what? I can't stand the way it is, and I can't imagine that it'll change permanently. That doesn't mean it can't change or get better. It just means that right now she can't imagine it. And that's based on her personal experience with you. So she's not all about, let's work on the issues. That time has passed. Okay?
Yeah.
So here's the bad news. And I know this is harsh, but here's the bad news. Gentlemen, if there's a separation, she's not coming back to you. And I know that's harsh. Now, she may go forward with you, but she's not going backwards. And so every time you suggest counseling or therapy or working on the marriage or working on the issues or even working on yourself, that feels unsafe to her because it represents going backwards. So that's why it doesn't work, okay? Bottom line is you can't talk your way out of things that you behaved yourself into.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a quick example. One of our clients, his name's Randall. His wife had just asked him to move out, and he didn't want to move out. In fact, his buddies told him not to. They said, if you move out, it'll look like you're abandoning the family, and she'll never let you back. So he contacted us. He reached out, and he said, what should I do? I told him, I said, you've got a golden opportunity here. You can demonstrate that you're going to put her first, or you can demonstrate that you're going to put you first. What do you want to do? And he said, I want to put her first. I said, okay, then you have to move out. So he moved out and he joined our program, and we just worked on him. We didn't try to change her mind. We just gave him some new unshakable habits.
Yep.
So he just worked on himself. And about 10 and a half weeks later, he got a text from his wife. And all it said was, wow, I really like what I'm seeing, and I miss you. Please come home. And he moved back home, and they reconciled. They're still together today. They're doing great.
Yeah.
That's how this works.
So would you say that it's fair to assume that most of the time, even when you get to this point of separation, that there's still that connection? It's maybe been lost a little bit, but it's still there to the point that if you are able to step back and make these changes independent of her, right? Because I would imagine that if you're making them and she knows you're just trying to do it to appease her, then it falls flat, right? But if you're doing this independently of her and she sees it, like more often than not, does that actually help to get them back together? Or is that just like a sometimes thing? Or what are the odds?
Yeah, that's the great news. It's the only way that works. There has never been a time in my 14 years experience that a husband convinced his wife to come back.
Yeah.
There's never been a time when a wife has said, oh, honey, you're right. Thank you for showing me the error of my ways.
Yeah.
Said no wife ever, right? So you are absolutely correct. It's independent. It's not dependent on her. It's completely up to you to change your focus. Your focus can't be on trying to change your mind. Your focus should be on becoming the best version of yourself that you can be.
Yeah.
Right? That's what works. And we have two goals. In my program, we have two simple goals. Goal number one, focus on your relationship with Christ. Become closer to Christ. That's goal number one. Goal number two, become the best version of yourself that you can be. Great news is those are both within your control, and trying to change her mind is not in your control. So stop it. All it's doing is pushing her away.
Yeah. And the thing I think for a lot of guys is maybe a bit of a hard thing to grasp here, and you touched on this, but I would like to maybe go a little deeper into this, is this idea of, like you said, for us men, it's problem, fix, right? Like, right, solution, let's fix it.
Right.
For her, it's like a disconnect. And I think an analogy I'm going to use here, and tell me if this is like off base, right? But this is what I'm imagining, is let's say your car battery dies. As a man, you jump it off, it starts. If it starts back up the next time, you're like, everything's good, and you don't worry about the battery no more. For her, even if the battery starts back up, there's always going to be that voice of, is the battery going to die on me? Do I just need to get a new battery? Is it a problem? Is that a good analogy to help guys understand this connection versus just solution mindset?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not about fixing the immediate problems, right? Because you have a track record. If you guys have been married for, 10 years, you have a 10-year track record. So a quick fix, a quick solution is not going to work. Not when it reaches the stage of an actual separation. It can even be a separation in the same house. But if you guys are like really separated and not living the same life, right? You're not on the same page. Okay, if that's not happening, then a quick fix, a quick change of the battery or a quick jump of the battery isn't what she needs. She needs a new battery. Yeah, she needs a whole new way of looking at it, right? And it's not about saying, hey, look at me. I'm working on myself. Hey, can we get back together now? Yeah, okay, that's going to make her feel unsafe and it's going to push her away. It makes it worse. Yeah. So the first thing you want to do is stop pushing her away. And then she can have some space to process her own feelings. You don't ignore her, by the way. There's a really dumb thing out there online, and they call it no contact. That's ridiculous. That's a manipulation. You're trying to manipulate her into what? Coming back to you? They say, okay, just leave her alone, ignore her, then she'll miss you and come back. Complete manipulation. Is that who you really want to be? You decide. You get to decide who you want to be. Do I want to be a master manipulator? Or do I want my wife to see that I'm not even changing for her? I'm changing for me. When I change for me, that's permanent. When I change for her, it's temporary and unsustainable. And she knows it. Yeah. If you're doing it for her, that's just manipulation.
Yeah, I love that last point you made there of it's unsustainable, because I always tell people any goal that you're going after, if you're going after it for the wrong reasons, you will not stick with it.
That's right.
Doesn't matter what it is. You have to go after, it has to be for the right reasons.
Right.
Today we talked about that first mistake of trying to change her mind and why that's a mistake. And we talked a little bit about the solution to that. Now, I'm assuming that within your coaching programs or within your book, you give more details about what kind of things you need to be doing during that separation period to work on yourself and to get better. But I think part of that we're going to be talking about tomorrow, which is the mistake of not taking the time to understand her perspective.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right, guys, that is the end of part 1 of our 3-part series with Randy Pryor. I hope you guys got some really great value out of that already. You definitely do not want to miss parts 2 and 3, where we cover the other 2 mistakes that a lot of guys are making when it comes to trying to save their relationship. If you are enjoying the episode so far, would encourage you, look down in the show notes. Randy's contact information is down there. You can always reach out and connect with him. And also, to help other guys who might need to hear this episode find it, it would be really helpful if you could leave us a rating and review on the podcast as well. So until the next episode, this is Stephen Box reminding you, as always, today is a great day to escape the chaos and start living life on your terms.